Hello, welcome to the screencast of Code One Digest. Today in this video, we will learn how to set up Spring Boot application using IntelliJ IDE. We will also learn how to build, run, and test Spring Boot application. In this screencast, I will talk about Spring Boot application with Maven as a build automation tool and using IntelliJ IDE. Since few years, I have been using IntelliJ IDE and it is getting very popular in developer community. Earlier to IntelliJ, I was using Eclipse, and you don't have to worry if you are using Eclipse IDE. You can still follow this video because the features are same in IntelliJ and Eclipse. And I don't find any difficulty in switching from Eclipse to IntelliJ. The prerequisite to the topic is you must have a basic understanding of Java language, familiar with Spring Framework, and also Maven build automation tool. So without any further delay, let's start. First, let's create a Spring Boot project. It is very easy to create a Spring Boot project. Spring provides an online Spring Initializr tool. We can open that tool in a browser and create a Spring Boot project with the required dependencies. You need not to worry about that. I will share the URL of the Spring Initializr tool in description of this video. Okay, open the browser and type springinitializer.io. The first search result is showing the Spring Initializr tool. Click on that. This page will open, and on this page you have to select few options. The project type will use as a Maven because we are using Maven as a build tool. Language that we are using is Java, and the Spring Boot version that we are using is 2.7.5. Some of the inputs we have to provide like group name. So here we'll give code one digest demo. Then package name, it will create automatically. Code one digest demo, we'll just remove demo to avoid duplicate. Code one digest.demo is the package name it will create with. And packaging style that we want is jar, not a var. And Java version that we'll use is Java 8. On right hand side, we'll have option to create dependencies. On click of this button, we can select what all dependencies we want upfront to be added in a project. So we want a Spring Web as a dependency. We'll select that. And why we want a Spring Web is because the Spring Web dependency contains common web specific utilities for both servlet and portlet environments. We select this, review the input once, and click generate. It will download your demo.zip file. It is a project file. Okay, so we have the project downloaded zip file here. Let extract the project. Now we can see inside this folder we have a project files. All the files related to this project are available here in this directory. Now what we'll do is we'll start IntelliJ and we'll import this project into IntelliJ. I'm using a community version of IntelliJ 2020, and here I'll select import option, load that project. I know the project is here in D drive project Spring demo. Yeah, here we go, and we select the pom.xml. Here we will get option to open that pom.xml as a file or as a project. We'll say open as a project, and now IntelliJ will do a magic. While loading this pom.xml, it will download all the dependencies libraries defined in pom.xml. We'll just give a minute for IntelliJ to get ready. You can see it's still loading the project. Yeah, now it seems to be ready. Here we can see project is now imported. Okay, so I'm using IntelliJ here. Please let me know what is your preference on IDE, whether you like IntelliJ IDE or Eclipse. Please reply in comment section about it. So before we proceed in this video, let's understand what is a Spring Boot and how it is different from traditional Spring framework. We'll go to the slides. So what is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is a module in Spring framework, and purpose of Spring Boot is to simplify the use of Spring framework application development. It is used for rapid application development. We can build our application faster with Spring Boot. It is best for standalone application and comes with embedded HTTP server, that is Tomcat and Jetty. So what we are trying to say is when we use Spring Boot applications, so we don't have to worry about the configurations and settings and all those required files that you need to start your application. It is being taken care automatically in Spring Boot. That was not the case with the Spring. So how is Spring Boot is different from a Spring framework? Let's understand that in detail. Spring is a web application framework based on Java, and a Spring Boot is a module in Spring. Spring Boot is recently introduced to simplify the usage of a Spring framework. Using Spring framework, when we are using a Spring framework, we have to do the configuration manually to make application ready to run. We have to do, we have to write those XML files. We have to write the configuration files. We have to have all those settings in place, and that takes a lot of time. But Spring Boot comes with a default configuration and a lot of annotations that take care of the configuration. It supports auto configuration and build and provide us production ready application quickly. Let's understand the project structure that we have now in IntelliJ. So in IntelliJ, if you see, we have IDEA folder. This folder contains all the files required by this IDE. Okay. Next one is the Maven folder where we have a wrapper folder inside. It contains all the Maven related configurations, and Spring comes with its own Maven version to build the application and so on. So all those files will go inside this folder. Then we have already seen the pom.xml. This is important for any Maven project to have to define dependencies and so on. Then if we see source folder, in source folder we have two folders. One is main and one is test. Main is a folder where all our source code will go with the configuration files. So all our source files, Java files goes inside the Java folder. You can create a package here and define the Java classes. In the resource folder, we have properties files, configuration files, and so on for the project. In the test folder contains the Java classes for the test that we write JUnit test cases and then so on. So all those test classes will go here inside the test folder. If we see the external library, we'll see all the dependencies that have been downloaded. All those libraries have been downloaded. Like what you see here is a Spring Boot libraries downloaded as per the version. So once we define one dependency in pom.xml, it downloads other dependencies automatically. So all those dependencies you can see here in external library. So you can see some of the libraries have been downloaded from Apache, some JUnit libraries have been downloaded and so on. So that all goes here. One thing is not showing up here is a target folder. So target folder comes when we build this application, and it will contain all the compiled code and required configuration properties file to run that application. So that you can see inside this project demo folder, you will have a target folder created. Now let's understand what's there in our main class, our Spring Boot application class. So this demo application, if you see, this is the first class being automatically created. This is the entry point for your Spring Boot application. If you see, the import statements have been automatically added here. Then we have the first notation, that is a Spring Boot application A notation. This is telling that this application is a Spring Boot application, and this A notation is comprised of three A notations, important A notations. Those are a Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan. What does that mean? That Spring Boot automatically configuring your application with the default configuration, and it is also scanning for other component automatically at the beginning of the project. So other component means you may be writing other component classes, another services classes, or repository classes. So all those classes will be scanned and it's stitched together, because we may be using auto-wired A notations to inject those dependencies later point of time. So this component scan A notations wire all those components and get it ready for your applications. Okay, let's go to the slides. So as I said, Spring Boot annotation is a combination of Spring Boot configuration, enable auto configuration, and component scan annotation. It does those three tasks automatically for you. Then we are going to use a REST controller annotation in our application now. I'll show you that. What does it mean? Why do we need REST controller? So REST controller annotation is a combination of controller annotations and response body. So controller annotations in Spring means a servlet listening on a certain endpoint and serving the request. If you're familiar with the Spring framework, you would be knowing dispatcher servlet. It's the first servlet in a Spring framework. Dispatcher servlet routes the request to this controllers as per the endpoint mapping, right? And then response body converts the response to a JSON or XML format. If you familiar with the Spring, in a Spring, the response was always in form of view, in form of JSP or HTML. But here, REST controllers response is always in form of JSON or XML format. So what is the difference between a controller annotation and REST controller annotation? As I said, controller annotation, the response is always HTML page that is for the human readable format. Because controller annotation converts a response data that is model to a certain view or a template, maybe HTML page or JSP page, and that is for the human in the human readable format. But whenever we are using a REST controller, we are asking Spring application to convert the response in JSON or XML format. Why? Because we will be using this for applications. Applications will share the informations in form of JSON or XML format. Here, this is not human friendly format. This is for the applications. One application is calling service and want a response back. So it will read a JSON response or XML response and so on. Now the question comes, why we have to use REST controller? Why we call it REST API or RESTful APIs? What is the purpose of that? So let's give a thought. What is RESTful API? So REST stands for your representational state transfer. It is an architectural style In this architectural style, everything is defined as a resource, be it a folder, be it a file, or be it a data, anything and everything is a resource here. And in RESTful API, in RESTful web services, you can access these resources via URL using HTTP protocol. So all these resources can be exposed to an external world through some URL using HTTP protocol. So that's the whole purpose of RESTful API, that everything, be it data or be it file or be it anything, right? We can expose it to internet through some URL, okay, on HTTP protocol. Also, RESTful web services helps applications to communicate with each other in a standard format, that is JSON or XML, though these applications may be built into different technology or framework altogether. So one application may be running in a Node.js, or other application may be running in a Java Spring Boot, and both are APIs. But these two can share and communicate with each other by having a common response type, that is JSON or XML. Okay, now let's try to build our application. So on the right hand side, you will see a Maven option in IntelliJ. Just click on that. You will see a project is listed, and in lifecycle we have multiple options. So we'll select clean and install. What does it mean? We want to clean the target folder first, and then we want to build our application. In Maven, the sequence of these operations are automatically decided, that the clean will happen first and install will happen after that always. So on click of play button, we'll see the build is triggered. We'll see what is happening here now. Deleting it is deleting the target folder as a part of clean operation. Then it's try to compile. It's compiling one Java class, that we have our main Java class. Then after that, it's try to compile our test classes. It is compiling one test class because it comes with the default one test class. So running a test cases here, that one test class is running. And here is the result of the test case. It says run 1, failure 0, error 0, skip 0. After that, when all tests are passed, then it try to build a jar file. Here is building a jar. Jar file is created inside the demo folder, your project folder. Inside the project folder, you will have a target directory created. Inside target directory, you will have this jar created, demo snapshot.jar, and it says build is successful. Now let's try to run this application and see what happens. So select your main class, right click on that. You will see this option run demo application.main. IDE, Eclipse or IntelliJ automatically detects where is your main class, and it will get listed here to run it. Just click on this and we'll see that application is building now, getting ready to run. It is checking all the dependencies, all the files are in place. Now you can see the console is cleaned up and it's starting the application. Yeah, so here we see that application. Here it says starting demo application with Java version this on this desktop, and this is our process ID. Then it says Tomcat initialize on this port. As I said, Spring Boot comes with its own internal web server. So it is initializing, and then after loading all the dependencies and classes and Spring context, Spring container, everything, it is ready here. It says Tomcat started on port this with the context path, because as we have not given any context path, so it is empty. So we know that our application is started at port 8080. Now we'll check in browser. In browser, we'll just type http localhost 8080, see what happens. So yeah, we are getting error because we have not created a mapping yet. We have to create mapping and controller classes to resolve this error. So what we'll do is now we will create a new class here, demo controller. Okay, and we'll say this is a REST controller class. Now in this class, we just define one method which return type string and called mapping, no input, and we'll just have a notation at request mapping. So what it will do is for any request, for any or every request, dispatcher servlet will route that request to this method default mapping, as we have not defined any endpoint yet. So for all the requests, it will come to this method and we'll just return welcome to Spring Boot demo. Yeah, now let's stop the application and rerun it. Here we go. The application is starting up. Let's go back to the browser and hit again. Yep. So what you see is a response from Spring Boot application. Welcome to Spring Boot demo. So as soon as you hit this URL, that means slash like this. As we have not created any explicit mapping, so dispatcher servlet routing that request to this particular method. Request reaches to the dispatcher servlet, and dispatcher servlet find there is no explicit mapping, and this is the default method for all incoming requests, hence the requests have been routed to this method. Now what we'll do is we'll create a explicit mapping for endpoint. So we'll define another method in this controller class, is string by mapping, and at the rate request mapping, or instead of that we'll use another annotation, that is get mapping. So we are saying that get mapping is for the get type of request and it has certain parameters like value. So what will be the value of our endpoint? So here we'll say by demo, and here we'll return, we want to return by boot demo. Now again we'll restart this application and see if we can hit this endpoint by demo. So on sending requests with this endpoint, dispatch servlet will find, okay, we have a mapping created in controller class, and hence the request will come to this method instead of this method. Okay, the application is started. Now we can go back to browser, and here we can type by demo. Yep, so you can see now we got a different response, that is by Spring Boot demo. That means dispatcher servlet has successfully routed the incoming request to desired method. that is this. Likewise, we can create as many mappings we want. We can even have multiple controllers in these applications for different URLs and so on. Okay, let me summarize what we have learned in this video. We have seen how to create a Spring Boot project using a Spring Initializer tool. We have also seen how to import project in IntelliJ. We have also learned how to write a controller class and create required request mapping through an endpoint. We have learned how to build, run, and test a Spring Boot application using Maven build tool in IntelliJ IDE. Let me know if you prefer some other build tool like Gradle, etc. and which one is the best. Please reply in the comment section. Also, we have understood few important Spring Boot annotations and their usage. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues, as this is a very useful information for beginners and software engineers. Please subscribe to my channel Code One Digest for more technology related videos. Thank you.